The African continent is spending about $35 billion on food imports alone, resulting in significant loss of jobs. By 2030, the size of the food and the agriculture business in Africa will be worth a whopping $1 trillion. My name is Peace Hyde, and on this special edition of My Words Today, we have an in-depth conversation with a man tasked to develop Africa through agriculture, Mr. Akinwumi Adesina. With a distinguished career as a development economist and agricultural development expert with 25 years of international experience, in 2015, Adesina added a new milestone to his illustrious career, becoming the first Nigerian to serve as president of the AfDB Bank Group against a backdrop of global and regional headwinds, including depressed commodity prices and the lagged impact of the Ebola epidemic, which reduced tourism income for many economies in West Africa. Akinwumi Adesina is the 8th elected president of the African Development Bank Group. He was elected to the position on May the 28th, 2015 by the bank's Board of Governors at its annual meetings in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. He took office at the bank's headquarters in Abidjan on September the 1st, 2015 and will serve an initial 5-year term. Adesina is a distinguished development economist and agricultural development expert with 25 years of international experience. He is the first Nigerian to serve as the president of the bank group. Adesina has served as Nigeria's Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development from 2011 to 2015, during which time he implemented bold policy reforms in the fertilizer sector and pursued innovative agricultural investment programs to expand opportunities for the private sector. Adesina has received a number of global awards for his leadership and work in agriculture. Thank you so much for joining us today, President Akinwumi Adesina.
Thanks for the time.
I want to start off by going into your description of yourself. Now, you're known as the man developing Africa, but how would you define Akinwumi Adesina?
Well, Akinwumi Adesina is somebody who is very focused in life. The only thing that gives him satisfaction is just seeing lives of people transformed. And not just in terms of one or two, in terms of tens of millions of people transformed. I think my life is only useful to the extent in which it changes the lives of others. That's me. That's what keeps me awake every day.
Talk to me a bit about your journey from the Rockefeller Foundation to Nigeria's agriculture minister to now your position at the AfDB.
Well, I joined the Rockefeller Foundation as a young scientist. I was scientist for Africa. And then, and of course, being one of the world's global institutions, it was great for me to learn. I learned quite a lot during that time. And one thing that I learned that stayed with me in all of my career was what my boss told me. My first day of joining Rockefeller Foundation. Took me out to lunch. We went downstairs and I thought he was taking me to a great restaurant. And we were at the side of the road and he saw these guys that were selling hot dogs and he bought a $1 hot dog and he gave it to me. And I thought we were going to eat it on the way going to the restaurant. He said, let's go back to the office. We went back to the office. He said, what would you like to drink? I said, Sprite. He said, at Rockefeller Foundation, we don't serve Sprite. We have water. So he gave me water. And then that was my lunch. And then he shook my hands. He said, welcome to the business of managing a dead man's asset. Find the sharpest mind you can find in the world. Give them the money to do great things, and then get out of their way. I have never forgotten that. So all through my career, it's about how do I find the right people? How do I strengthen them? How do I help them to be able to do great things? So when I became Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria, my focus was not on myself. My focus was what will I do that would transform the lives of millions and millions of farmers. These are some of the things I took with me when I became Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria. You can imagine it. Africa's largest country, lots of problems, challenges, but I'm not one that's deterred by challenges. I just thought to myself, what's the most important thing that I will do as minister? And I thought I had to put farmers at the center of it. My heart pulse was, what will I do to put the biggest smiles that they can have, change their lives? And I took big risks. I went after the fertilizer cabals in Nigeria. We ended the fertilizer corruption that was 40 years. It took us 90 days. We took the advantage of the power of mobile phones. We registered farmers in Nigeria. We were able to reach 15 million farmers directly via mobile phones with seeds and fertilizers, and eliminated the old system of government buying and selling stuff and so on, which was quite revolutionary in Nigeria. And now around the world, people have actually taken that on. Then I thought to myself, why aren't bankers lending to farmers? When a farmer walks right through a banker's office, all you see is risk, risk, risk. You don't see opportunities. And I felt that European farmers, American farmers were supported. Why shouldn't African farmers be supported? And so we set up a facility that will reduce the risk of lending to these farmers by commercial banks. And it was a $350 million facility by a central bank governor of Nigeria, a very good friend of mine, Sanusi Lamido, who is now the emir of Kano. And we set it up, and it was an instant blast. We were able to leverage $3.5 billion of financing for farmers and agricultural value chains in Nigeria. So in everything that I did as Minister of Nigeria, I felt that the farmers were at the center. I thought the farmers got seeds and fertilizers that they would never have gotten from the old corrupt system. It was a lot of risk on my part. But I can't think of anything more important in life anyway than taking risk for the poor.
One of the things that you said it really stood out to me was the advice you received, which was find the smartest person or the sharpest mind and get out of their way. But I have to ask, how did you become the sharpest mind? What molded your mindset to become so phenomenal in your quest to really redefine Africa?
I guess for me, I've always felt that Africa is the most blessed continent in the world. God has been extremely good to this continent. We don't have earthquakes, we don't have cyclones, we got great sunshine all the time, lots of water, everything is here, nothing. And so I just felt that, we've got to really use our assets better. We have to unlock that potential. Potential is great. But tell me, who eats it? You've got to unlock that potential. So my drive is, constant pulse of my heart is, how do we unlock our potential? Human potential, natural resource potential, institutional capacity to do great things. And for me, when I take a look at it, I see myself as nothing more than an instrument of change. It's not about me. It's the fact that I'm so focused on the fact that Africa, for example, take the case of electricity. My own philosophy of development or growth is very simple. I look at things and I say, if I'm not ashamed of something, I'm not going to change it, right? But if I'm really ashamed of something, then I'll change it. The very fact that Africa doesn't have electricity makes me ashamed. And the fact that Africa is not able to feed itself makes me ashamed. So it is those things that actually drive me, because I desperately want Africa to change. I believe development has to happen by pride.
One of the things that stand out to me when I saw you doing your shoot for the Forbes Africa cover was just how much you radiate joy and you're always smiling. But to achieve the heights that you've achieved in your career cannot be done by any easy feat. So I must ask, what has been your worst day in business so far?
I think I'm always an eternal optimist. I see where people see challenges, I see opportunities. Where they see obstacles, I see an opportunity to innovate around them. I believe that if you take a look at how God has made the world, He gives you the sun every day, the sun comes out and it brightens up the day. And so I'm somebody that has hope every time that today is where we have. Tomorrow is going to be better than today. I don't have to be down by anything. So I'm constantly optimistic. I face my challenges with a sense of optimism that I can overcome them.
Is there any particular challenge that stood out to you in your journey?
Well, I guess people think I am always setting extremely high targets, but I always tell myself, of what good are targets that are so easy to achieve anyway?
So in terms of your difficulties that you've managed to overcome, is there any particular day or experience in your career that stands out to you that actually made you question your future?
I've never had that because I guess I am not somebody who focuses so much on problems. Of course, I have challenges in every single thing I do, but my mind is always focused on my end goal. Right. And so I overcome them, right? There could be, for example, the fact that people don't believe you can get something done, yes. And I'm like, well, so, it means that I have to try harder, right? And I remember when I was Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria, we were asked to set targets in terms of what we were going to do as ministers. Mm-hmm. And the Minister of National Planning came to me and said, well, Minister of Agriculture, what are your targets? And I set my target. I said in, about 3 years, we will be able to produce for Nigeria an additional 20 million metric tons of food. He said, gee, that is high. Yes. So I wanted to really tone that down. Right. And he went and he told the president to tone it down. The president said, Akin, I was told that you've set this target so high. Why don't you just, cut it down a little bit? I said, Mr. President, you see, I was not elected. I was appointed, And so if I say I can do something, if you give me all the support that I need, then I've got no reason not to be able to execute them. Right. And if I don't, you fire me. That's what you do. And
were you ever worried that they may fire you?
I was never worried about that, right. Because I don't think I do things because I need a job. I'm passionate about everything that I do. Right. And so I remember the minister saying, well, Mr. President, looks like Akin is the only one that has his neck on the line. And after 3 years, fourth year, we actually exceeded the 20 million metric tons of additional food. We did 21 million metric tons of additional food. And I remember also when I was doing the Africa Fertilizer Summit, which brought together African heads of state, and President Obasanjo was then the president in Nigeria. We had to get everybody to focus on this particular issue. And we had a dinner one time, and the late Kofi Annan, who is, God bless his soul, just passed away, he's a great mentor of mine. He was talking to my boss as we planned this, and he said, one thing about Akin, it takes a lot of risks. And sometimes your heart will come out of your chest because it takes all this risk. Then he paused and he looked at Mr. Annan. He said, but one thing I must tell you about him. He works himself so hard that none of the risks ever comes to pass. Wow. So you can count on him. So I guess I'm never scared of things. I have faith in God and I go through things.
That is phenomenal. In terms of, there are a lot of young people that look at your journey. I think I even said it before we started the shoot that there's a lot of people that have their eye on your career and they're like, I wish I could do even a quarter of what you've achieved. What would be your advice to young people that want to follow in your footsteps?
First and foremost, have a clear vision. Have confidence in yourself. Have faith in God that there's nothing impossible that you cannot achieve. Surround yourself with great mentors that will always give you positive feedback and also some hard feedback about some things you need to change. But look, there's a reason where there's only one you in the world. And there's a reason why God put you there. So live your life always to the fullest potential that you can. But don't ever listen to so many naysayers. The world is full of naysayers. But you've got to believe in yourself and go with what your heart tells you can do. I firmly believe that with God on your side, there's absolutely nothing that you cannot do as long as you focus on people, not on yourself.
Amazing. And I noticed, when you talk about your journey, I've watched countless of your interviews, and you're very grounded. You have a very strong foundation. Now, I understand that you were born in Ibadan, and you actually raised, your father was a farmer. What was it like growing up? How did you form this solid foundation that you've built success on?
Well, first is I remember, growing up, in areas in which there was no good sanitation, good toilets and water and stuff like that. And so I actually came out of poverty. So poverty for me was not a theoretical concept. I saw that. And I remember when I had to go to high school, my father also sent me to a village school. And by that time, when I was in the village school, I asked my father, why didn't I go to one of those cool schools in Lagos or Ibadan? And so, whenever you wanted to talk to dead girls, ladies at that time, everybody wanted to know what school you went to. And so, how will I pronounce the name of my school? And my father, I remember telling me, he said, look, I want you to go to a village school because you never know what God will make you in life. When you see the reality of poverty, if God ever makes you somebody important in life, you will know exactly what to do. And so that has always been a guiding light for me, because I've never seen anybody that wants to be poor. They just want education, opportunities for the kids to have education. They want water, sanitation, good health care. They want good housing. They want great jobs for themselves. The same things that you and I think about is what they think about every day. And so when I look at what has really guided me, is that I have a sense of responsibility that God put me on the face of the earth to do something. And that I must always focus on that. And at the end of the day, always recognize I'm an instrument. I'm not the goal. And so I must use my talent, God-given talent, to ensure that I'm able to help others. I'm able to provide hope for others. I'm able to make sure that we can lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Nothing makes me more happier than that. I'm fortunate to have a fantastic wife, Grace, who she grounds me very well. And she goes into a lot of debates with me about what I want to do. But she's an excellent partner, for me in everything that I have done. And so I think at the end of the day, I'm a people-focused person. And I am very, very impatient with underdevelopment.
Amazing. I'm going to still go back into your family background. Your mother, what profession did she have, or was she working with your father?
My mother actually, she had her own store. She had a small grocery store that she used to have. She sold soft drinks, and I must tell you, I was a pretty naughty kid. So most of the time that she would ask me to give oversight for the shop, I did have a few drinks here and there.
Right.
I must tell you.
I would do the same thing. In terms of your education, you studied agriculture and economics. Was that influenced heavily by your father, or did you actually have a love for that?
Well, actually, no, because my father wanted me to be a medical doctor.
Oh, wow.
And, he grew up as a farmer, so he would never want me to be in agriculture.
Right.
So I remember when I was a kid, I was very young. I finished high school. I was just a little over 14 years old. And my father would apply, to the universities, and he will fill all my forms for me. First choice was medicine, second choice was dentistry, and third choice was veterinary medicine. Whether I liked it or not, I was going to be a doctor of one kind. Mm-hmm. So the first year I applied, they said my grades didn't match up to medical school, so we'll take you for agriculture. My father went bananas. He said, absolutely no way. So I did it second year again. They said, we'll take you again for agriculture. So I finished my A-levels, and then I applied to the university, direct entry. And they said, we will still take you for agriculture. So my father said, God must desperately want you to be in agriculture. So that was how I went into agriculture. And so I thought, well, what's the best way to make my father happy? I better do a PhD and have a doctor in front of my name. So I went to the United States and did my PhD in agricultural economics at Purdue University. And when I finished, I wrote my father, I said, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina.
Amazing.
So I said, I'm a doctor now. So you used to call me doctor. So just a couple of years ago, our son finished medical school, and in his graduation in Florida, my father was 90 years old, so I took him to Florida for his graduation. So my father called, he says, a doctor, and I turned. I said, yes, Dad. He said, no, I don't mean you. I mean the real medical doctor, which is your son. And so now I had competition. So I had to call my son and my father together. I said, even the medical doctors will tell you, take 3 tablets 3 times a day, but only after food, which means that agriculture is still much better than medicine.
I love that.
So you can see, I'm in the coolest profession ever.
Yes, you are. I can see that your focus is on the millennial generation and getting them into the agriculture industry. In terms of the trends, what do you think can be done to increase the participation of the millennial generation in agriculture? Because right now, fortunately or unfortunately, everyone's fixated on oil, and agriculture is the diamond in the rough. What do you think can be done to change that narrative and encourage the new generation to all latch into this?
Well, I think we've got to catch people young. First and foremost, if you take a look at movies, how agriculture is portrayed in movies. So every time you see a farmer in the movie, it will be in thatch roofs, in villages and stuff like that. So it conveys an impression that if you go into that area, you'll be poor. And so one of the things we've got to do is to change that imagery in the perception of agriculture. Some of the richest people in America and in Europe are farmers. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to help our young people to have great knowledge of how to run agriculture as a business. It doesn't mean you have to be producing as a farmer. If you want to, that's cool. But along the value chain, there are lots of things that you can do. You can process, you can add value, you can do marketing, you can do logistics, you can do transport, you can do all kind of things, full retail. And these are big businesses that are all now coming up, for young people. The third one is the role of new technology. If you take a look at e-commerce today, people used to go to the market, they still do, but I can tell you in the very near future, a lot of what you call as the open market, most of it will go down because people want to have different kind of food, healthy food. They want to have it fast, well prepared for them. So these are areas in which with IT, with e-commerce, people are going to deliver food to people's homes. They're not going to be going to the big market to go and buy stuff. All of that is going to change. So I really think that's very important for young people to combine IT with agriculture. The other thing we have to do for them, of course, is make sure that we get them access to finance. You see, at the African Development Bank, I'm really very passionate about this. We set up a program already, which is called Enable Youth, which is to be in agriculture. Last year, we invested $300 million in 8 countries to support young people to get into agriculture as a business. And we're going to do it for 30 countries. I believe that in the near future, not too long from now, you're going to be seeing farmers, young people, sitting in homes using, drones, to control their farms, measuring their farms. It's already happening. They're going to use automatic tractors to be able to harvest their products. They will not be wearing overalls that farmers are. They will probably be wearing suits, but they'll be in homes and they can monitor their farms. That is how fast the 4th industrial revolution is changing our world, and I think it's going to rapidly change the world of agriculture. So we must get our young people prepared for that new world of food and agribusiness.
Indeed. Since you've become the president of the African Development Bank, it's very evident that you've made such a huge impact. But personally, what would you say some of the key milestones in your journey so far that you have experienced?
Well, first, I feel tremendously honored to have been given the opportunity to lead this bank. When I was sworn in as president, I made a statement. I said, this is not a job. I am not looking for a job. This is a mission to be able to take an institution to create new fortunes for our continent, to be able to chart new pathways for our continent, to be able to build more resources to our continent, bring a lot of happiness to our people. That's what it's all about. First and foremost, there's some of the milestones we very quickly got to work and define where we can help transform Africa. We call it high fives, just high fives, light up and power Africa, to feed Africa, to industrialize Africa, to integrate Africa, and to improve the quality of life of the people of Africa.
Well, I know you're doing the Africa Investment Forum in November in Johannesburg, and the vision of that is to create an opportunity for a transformation platform with funding for bankable projects reaching $90 billion. Please elaborate on the vision for this initiative and what drove you to create it.
If you take a look at where capital is in the world, globally, you have about $128 trillion of assets under management. But you're sitting outside of Africa. In fact, our own sovereign wealth funds and pension funds are also investing outside of Africa, not investing in Africa. And yet Africa has an infrastructure deficit gap of anything between $68 billion and $108 billion. So I figure, well, look, we're investing a lot of money as African Development Bank. In energy, we're investing $12 billion in 5 years. In agriculture, we're investing $24 billion over the next 10 years. But that's not enough. as big as those numbers are. We need to be able to get smarter and leverage the global pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and the other institutional investors to invest in Africa. We need rail, port. We need all kinds of things. Water, sanitation. We're rapidly rising up, population in the urban areas. So I said, okay, what are the reasons why investors don't invest in Africa? Well, they will tell you, bankable projects. We don't have bankable projects. We also have a lot of risks. And so I always say to myself, okay, so you're an investor, you want to invest in Africa. It's like a plane. You come on a plane, you land on a strip, and it's a strip like a bush strip somewhere. Mm-hmm. It's very bumpy ride. Will you do it again? No, you won't do it again. No. So I want us to have a platform in which global investors could land their investments in Africa on a runway. Mm-hmm. That's a very smooth runway. Great, well-developed projects, instruments that allow us to de-risk their investments, and also improve policy environment that will make their investments thrive. That's what led to the creation of the Africa Investment Forum. That forum will look at bankable projects. You mentioned how much of the projects that are already on the platform. Actually, as of yesterday, it's $120 billion of projects that we have on the platform.
And just my final question, your career is phenomenal, your essence is powerful, but what do you want your legacy to be?
Well, my legacy, I would like it to be that I used my God-given talent to do exactly what God wanted me to do, which is to help to lift millions of people out of poverty and give them hope. My life is only as significant to the extent that it can make that happen.